Hi everybody. Today we're going to start an adventure. We're going to start an adventure here with this 1960 Ford Thunderbird.
You are about to know the thrill of seeing that which has never been seen before. You are about to enter a beautiful, exciting, wonderful new world. The world of 1960. For the first time in history, you'll see the world's most wanted car.
Thunderbird, the finest of fine cars, the last word in wish it were mine cars, the dream car of the wonderful new world of Fords.
The 1960 Thunderbird.
Now I should probably tell you why this Thunderbird is special to me. This particular Thunderbird was purchased by my dad back in 1989. He purchased this car off of a rancher in southeastern Arizona for around $4,000. It was a cash and shotgun trade. He must have thought it was a pretty good deal because my dad usually studied up on those sort of things. But I actually remember going and picking this car up with him and seeing it for the first time, literally in a garage. Or I should say literally in a barn on a ranch. It had the prerequisite dust and rat turds on it, but it still ran and ran pretty good. My dad had an intention to go ahead and restore this Thunderbird. It wasn't actually that bad. It was full red, none of this primer gray that you see here, and the interior looked pretty decent. As I recall, there is a minor crack in the rear upholstery, but my dad actually took the time and prior to purchase wrote down a list. See his log book he started. But he wrote down a list of the type of things that he thought needed to do. Transmission overhaul being one of them. We'll talk about that later. And then the cosmetic clean repair. So he figured he was going to put about another $6,000 into this vehicle. Now, as I mentioned, he drove it home. We did some routine maintenance on it, oil change and the like. But it up and drove. So this would have been September of '89, and for the next couple of years, it would be kind of a weekend driver there. In fact, my sister drove this car to high school, and I even took it to prom on that one. So not a bad car to go to prom. And she was the person who was driving it when it stopped driving. So as my understanding is, she pulled up to a stop sign, heard a clunk, and the car would no longer go forward or reverse. My dad would later come and pick it up, park it at the house, and there it sat for the rest of the time. Now, that would have been around 1991. And my dad, in the meantime, would continue to work for another few years, and then he would retire. And his intent was to go ahead and get this car up and running. But something came up in between that. He actually had a chance to buy back this. This is a 1969 Chevy K20. He purchased this truck brand new in 1969, ordered it, and then he sold it to somebody that he worked with. Let's open her up here. And he ended up restoring this vehicle. So he started working on this truck somewhere around 2008. If you're interested on this truck, I actually have a video posted on this same channel from when he was doing that, and not a lot of videos on the channel prior to that or after that where he was working on that 69. But back to the 60 Thunderbird. This car here ended up sitting, as I said, and it didn't get any better with age. So it was covered for quite some time, but eventually the cover rot. And as it rotted away, this thing was fully exposed to the sun. Now, around 2015, 2014, during Thanksgiving, my dad brought this vehicle up to me on a trailer and said, "Here you go, son. Here's the title, and the project is yours." So it sat actually outside at my house in the backyard, much to my wife's dismay, until I was able to build the garage that we're in now. And then I rolled it into the garage, and from that point on, we waited for a time to go. So now's the time. We're going to get this going. So what are we going to do here? Well, I'm gonna do this in a couple different phases. So eventually I want this thing to be nice and shiny. But for now, I'm just gonna start to get this thing trying to run. So conceptually, this vehicle will run. It, after all, was running when it stopped. We know the transmission's got something a little screwy with it, but the engine itself was okay when it was turned off. So we're gonna try to get the engine going. We're gonna figure out what's wrong with the transmission, probably pull the transmission and get that going. We'll get brakes going on this one, get the fuel figured out, get us to bear. Basically, this thing will drive on its own again, looking in the condition that it is now. And then at some point here, we're gonna go ahead and start on the rest. So what's the rest? Well, I'm kind of thinking of this as two phases. My goal is to actually get a late model Crown Victoria or Grand Marquis or something of the like, and take the front end out of that along with the engine and transmission and stuff that into there. So this is a unibody construction car. It was one of the first unibodies at the time, so there's gonna be some work doing that. But the idea is get that modern drivetrain in here, also take care of the rear brakes, and basically have a fully functioning modern drivetrain in a great old looking car. I know, if you're a Thunderbird purist and you love these square birds, you're probably thinking this is butchery. This is 22,000 out of 90-some thousand that were built. Nothing particularly special about this car itself, other than its specialness to me. And I want to make a car that I can drive around town, not have to worry about, and kind of go in and out, and still have that cool factor. So I'm going to say one thing more about this story, because there's a movie called Lonesome Dove. It's one of my dad and I's favorite. And in there's two characters, the two main, Woodrow and Augustus. And when Augustus, I believe it is, gets hurt and he's on his deathbed, he's talking to Woodrow. He says, I'm going to give you one more adventure, another great excuse to go do something. And in the movie, of course, he has him truck his body all the way south back to a place that Claire's Orchard to bury. Well, my dad not quite so dramatic on that one, but nonetheless, he's given me another great adventure with him. So I'm excited to get into this, and we'll go from there. But it's probably worth a look around this thing first so you can see what sort of adventure we're talking about, and we'll talk through it as we go. So the exterior of this car, it has seen its better days. Sitting out in the desert sun will do it to you. As you can probably tell, this thing, she's gotten repainted once or twice. Somebody wanted an all-white car, and so they painted it white. The original car actually came out as a solid Monte Carlo red. So it was red up on top as well as the red body. It did have the black on white interior, which we'll see inside. And it came with the Thunderbird Special, the 352 with the Cruise-O-Matic transmission. Let's open this hood up and you can see what we're working with on the engine. You'll have to excuse the noise. Oof, that is squeaky. So I've actually cleaned this car up here a little, if you guys know Thunderbirds, you'll know that the original color was not actually blue. This actually came with the yellow valve covers, and then the entire engine was blue itself. So although when my dad bought this, it showed 75,000 miles on the odometer, it may have been overhauled at some point. At that point, the person spray painted the entire engine black. But we've got a few things we got to sort out. There's some chewed off wiring, some missing hoses, some other things, but technically it should work. Now structurally, you'll see there's some rust in this thing. I don't know the history of where this car was purchased quite yet and how it ended up on that ranch, but it's got some rust. Now, I actually think that a lot of that rust came from sitting outside. It definitely had some rust before, but we've got some problems where the seals are just gone and rotted, especially around the windows. And so what's happened here, rain would come in, get into here, and it would go straight down into the interior. And when we take a look at the interior, you'll see that it really got jacked up. But a lot of cancer along the rockers, which was typical. This was Ford's first unibody design, so kind of revolutionary as they came out in 1958. But it really made for kind of an interesting car, especially past those little birds which were so cherished. Which, by the way, I myself cherish those little birds. My dad had a 1957 Thunderbird, which, as I recall, he said I was going to get to drive to my high school prom. He sold that before this, and I never did. Let's take a look at the interior here, see what we can see. We'll start out. I might have some other pictures I insert here, but you'll be able to see what's happened. This thing's sitting out. Little more than a polish or a buff out. I did spend some time cleaning off the dirt and everything off of this. But we're gonna have a little work on that. All the plastic and stuff on the knobs, it got all rotted out. Let's see what this says odometer wise. I think that's a 83, so 83,000 on the odometer. But what really happened that kind of surprised me is all of this. See all the pitting and all of the chrome everywhere you look. This thing got water in it, and it must have got hot in the sun, and boy, it just did something to that interior. So it wasn't like that when you purchased it, but it's like that now. Tell you what, let's throw this thing up on the lift, and you guys can see what it looks like on the underside. I had this up a little earlier there. I guess it'd help if we close the hood. Don't need that smashing into anything. Okay, got the car up on the lift, safe and sound here. I will say that as I went to go take this thing up on the lift for the first time, I had to do a little studying. As I mentioned, this actually has a unibody construction, and I wasn't quite sure where to lift, especially with all the rust that was going in there. Fortunately, there's still some amazing resources out there available. A group called squarebirds.org had the information. They actually had a diagram showing how that unibody frame was built and constructed, so where the most likely point was. I also saw some pictures online of where other people's had lifted these in some more suspect locations, which you could see some damage being done to it. So I went ahead and I picked those locations. I couldn't see underneath of it except for where I was placing the pads, and then I gave it a lift. But let's take a look and you can see what we're dealing with here. Try to add a little light to the subject on this. But the underside of this has seen better days. Now, there's some evidence here that makes me think that this is not an Arizona car. And as you can see, after I lifted this up the first time and I saw some of these rust locations, I got a little nervous because you don't like lifting up where there's missing structural support. But you can't really lift up along the side, especially when your sides look like this. And yep, the floorboard itself here rusted out. Not a lot of rust in other places. At some point we had quite the oil leak, and oil came down and coated this entire underside. We don't have to worry about this thing being too rusty. I'm pretty sure under there she looks pretty substantial. But we've got the leaf springs in the back. This was actually changed from the original 58, where they did a different suspension setup, which proved to be a handling failure. So they put this thing on and went back to a traditional leaf in the back. Got your spare tire, your undercarriage, and everything else there. So do the requisite Barrett-Jackson auction fly through here, and you can see kind of what we're dealing with. So the rust itself is probably the biggest concern. We'll slip over here real quick, set my light down. So you can see we got some Bluetooth panels here. If you notice, there's actually fiberglass here and along this whole side. We got fiberglass along the bottom here. So whenever this was repaired, whoever did it in fiberglass. And you can see some of their handiwork up in there. So we know we're gonna have to do some panels. We're gonna have to do some other things. Let's take this thing deck down off the lift. Okay, folks, the car is down and off the lift. And if you're still here, well, I sure appreciate it. I'm glad you come along for the ride. Next time here, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna open up that engine. We're gonna see what we can do to get it running. So I look forward to it. Thanks and have a great one. I'd like you to introduce my son here, Finn. Finn is gonna be helping me on this project quite a bit. When I was Finn's age, I helped my dad on a 1957 Ford Thunderbird. He entrusted me, I can't show him the Thunderbird we don't have, but what he did is he entrusted me to do some pretty important parts. I was responsible for refinishing and restoring the jack to make it brand new. Finn is gonna do the same thing here. And that jack needs a lot of work. So Finn's got a lot to head. But I remember doing that jack with my dad, and I hope that when he has his son, he remembers doing that jack with his son and builds a project just like this with his kids. So what do you think, Finn? Is this project gonna be a good one? All right, let's get to it.